Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today, we're joined by Greg Brenner, who's the Assistant Vice President of Talent and OD at the University of Miami, otherwise known as the HR Dad. We'll explain more. Welcome to the show, Greg. How are you?
Thank you, Chris. How are you doing? Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Before we jump in, tell everyone a bit about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today.
So personally, I'm a dad, and I'm dad first and a husband, and I have a couple of kids, and I happen to do HR as a living.
So your HR's like your side hustle.
Yeah, my HR is my side hustle, and those kids are definitely, as you'll find out later in life, they become your full hustle. Believe me.
Yeah, I can barely deal with one right now. How many do you have?
I have two, but they're in the teenage years, so 14 and 17. One
different challenges.
Yes, different challenges. Definitely different challenges. So I'm the Assistant Vice President of Talent and Organizational Development at the University of Miami, and I have a wonderful tribe of people that we get to manage and work and handle all the leadership development at the University of Miami and the health system, including doing organizational development work, executive coaching, and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. So I came across you on LinkedIn for your content, and people listening are thinking, why is he called the HR Dad? And why is the title of this episode HR Lessons from Our Kids? Right. So explain more.
Yeah. Well, first off, when you get a call from Chris, I mean, it's like you won the Oscars. It's like,
oh, come on, don't be silly.
This is like the HR podcast. I mean, so this is the real deal. And so I was really excited to do that. But the HR Dad started probably now about a year and a half ago. I had lost my parents about 3 years ago. Both passed away within about 7 months of each other. When that happens, when you have these kind of life events, you kind of you search for different things, you search for different meanings and stuff like that. And I've always wanted to write and do different things. I was also, in addition to my day job at working at the university, I also officiated college football, American college football. And so I was a zebra on the weekends, refereeing and doing a bunch of things, really, really busy. And my parents ended up passing away 7 months of each other. And so I wanted to start writing and collecting my thoughts and things of that nature. And I've always loved it, but I was never really a good technical writer. So I hired a writing coach that would help me with kind of formalizing that part of me. And I hired this lady named Martha Finney, and she's an HR author. She's written about 24 or been part of 24 HR books. So she knows the space really well. We started talking in our sessions, and everything became about, I was either talking about my kids, number one, talking about leadership, number two, talking about HR, number three. And she goes, you know what you are? And I was like, I'm kind of afraid to say yes. You never know what somebody's going to say when they say that. So she goes, you're the HR Dad. And I said, oh, that's cute. She goes, no, can you live with that for like the next 10 or 15 years? I go, yeah, no, I really like it. She goes, no, I'm serious. Can you see yourself as the HR Dad? I said, yeah, I can. And she kind of like talked me into it. She goes, start calling yourself the HR Dad and start using it. And that's what we did. And so I write a blog on LinkedIn and do a bunch of posts and stuff like that. And so it grew into being the HR Dad. So I think I credit Martha Finney for that.
Yeah. Well, here we are. It worked, right?
It worked.
It just goes to show, right? Building that your personal brand, how important it is, because here you are on the show. So what were the biggest lessons that you learned from being a dad that you then transferred into your life as a HR executive?
Well, I don't know if it's as much of the lessons from being a dad as the lessons that I learned from my kids.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I mean. Yeah.
No, it's good. So it's because I think they're different. They're two different things. And so the lessons that I learned from my kids is you see them grow up and you see what happens in elementary school and middle school and high school, and people are always trying to come together and lead and be part of something that's big. There's groups of people that hang out on the playground, and they want to play together. They want to have fun. They want to do different things. And so, HR really starts as a kid. You learn how to work with other people. I mean, it starts in kindergarten for saying, how do you work together? How do you play with Johnny and Sally and sit nice in your chair and stuff like that? That's like the roots of HR. But I've learned so much through my kids on, both my kids are involved in sports. My daughter's 14. She's a volleyball player. My son is is a basketball player. He's 17. They both have this grit about them, and you learn about their journey. So my son, through his basketball, he's taught me to have kind of a path to understand through his games and his work ethic of how you need to show up at work. So what he taught me was that you have to get your mind right. So as an employee or an employer, you have to make sure that you get your mind right. So he teaches me that through how he prepares for games, right? The second thing is you have to be in great physical shape. And I've dropped the ball on this one. So he works really, really hard about being in great physical shape. This is the lessons that you learn from your son and your daughters. And you'll eventually learn from yours, because I'm still working on that piece. The next piece was he started reaching out to mentors. So at a young age,
is this all on his own, or does he ever?
Wow, this is all on his own. So these kids that you think they're not listening and they're not doing, and he's starting to kind of figure things out on his own and say, you know what, I need help. My grandfather, his grandfather, was a basketball coach. He goes, let me talk to Grandpa and learn about the game. And who else can I talk to you about how to shoot? How do I break down film? How do I do things? So he found mentors, and he found mentors on how to take a mental approach at the game. And then he started studying. He started studying the game. And so how do you become a student and know your craft, right? So he does that. And my daughter does the same thing with volleyball. It would be the same thing. And then what he's learned, and what I've learned from him, and I think is really important, is the differentiator, is having fun. We
miss that part, don't we?
Yeah, we get into this crap as an adult, and it's just like, where'd the fun go? And it doesn't mean having fun to the standpoint of you have to have a foosball on every
or a slide going down the stairs.
Yeah, exactly. Those things are great if that works for you. However, if you're not having fun in the work that you're doing and with the people that you're doing with, it just doesn't make it enjoyable. It's just not enjoyable. So I've learned those type of lessons from my kids.
Sounds like a lot of that's credit to you, though, right? So don't forget about that.
No, that's definitely my wife. I have no trust me.
I love your honesty. I love the honesty. I love the honesty.
Now, parenting is just like HR is very difficult, right? You can read all the books in the world until you have that kid crying in your hands.
I realized.
Yeah, and you got to change that diaper, and you got to figure out how to swaddle the kid and everything else like that. It's no different than leading people and groups of people. So figuring out how to do that is hard, and you just try to do your best, and then you set them free.
One of the things that you spoke about before on our pre-call is leadership. You said leadership is hard, but we make it difficult.
We do. We muck it up, right? As leaders, we find a way to forget that there are people on the other side of that person. I have a sign up here in my office above us here, and I have a question mark, and it says commodity or gift. And when we look at people as a commodity, we muck it up.
That's why I don't like the word human resources.
I agree with you. I'm with you big time.
Human resources.
Yeah. So
think about that.
We're not a resource. I mean, come on.
That drives me mad, to be honest.
But if you look at your people as a gift, you look at them extremely differently. You look at them as they have a unique power they bring to the equation. And as a leader, we forget that because we get caught up in the meetings. We get caught up in the emails. We forget that there's a child. You forget that there's a parent. You forget that there's a person that's taking care of their mother or their mother-in-law or their father or father-in-law. They may be illness in their family. You forget all of that because we got this title of leader, and we've forgotten that. So we muck it up because we forgot the human aspect of it. We're more in tune to what's going on our phone than who's sitting in front of us. It becomes a really important piece of treating people like people, as simple as that, and talking to them, actually physically talking and hearing what they have to say, and let the people do what they do best. How many times do we know that leaders just take over and micromanage the heck out of things? And you hire people to do the job, let them do the job. So we muck it up ourselves.
Yeah. Jax on LinkedIn said, you have to watch what you do in front of your kids because your kid will do what you do. Yeah. And I've definitely learned that already, even as well. I think they say the habits that are formed is in the first 7 years, right, within children, based on their experiences. The first 7 years is they're just a sponge, just everything in. So it's very, very important that they build good habits and that you reflect that
Right.
as well. Like a mistake that I made recently, and my wife and I, happy to admit it, is that we realized we wasn't eating together as a family.
Mm.
And again, no, but not to the fault of our own. We're working, we're both working parents, we're busy, but then we realized with Robin, she wasn't eating correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, why is she not eating? And we realized it was actually our own doing. It's because we weren't eating as a family. So she was eating
Right.
on her own.
Right.
And we were eating separately. And then now since we're eating together, all of a sudden, everything's fine.
Right.
As well. But yeah.
But what you realize, Chris, is that moment, you make the analogy to the eating piece, but when you look at what happens down the road and the conversation that happens at the dinner table will ground her for years to come. I was brought up in a family, a different generation, that you sat down for dinner, and we sat down as a family for dinner. My dad would work. He was a dentist. He'd work his day. He'd come back, and we all better be at 6 o'clock. We better be sitting around that table. My mom had food ready, and it was, that was some of the most precious things from my childhood that I still today, being much older, cherish and try to recreate in this busy world of 24/7 internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Natasha and I, we never had that growing up in our own families as well, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's why we didn't really, that's not that we was doing what we did before, right? What we knew as kids.
Mm-hmm.
But even for the relationship with Natasha and I, as husband and wife, just sitting down with no distractions, no phones, no computers, just how are you today? Talking about employees, right? Some of the most meaningful relationships I've built with employees over the years, just sitting down and saying, "How are you?" Forget about work. Forget about how are you, and it's incredible what happens if you and also being vulnerable by myself and sharing how I'm feeling. It's like the most meaningful and incredible relationships are built. But we need to take time out of at a busy work day or in a busy life to actually make those conversations a priority.
Yeah, and mean it, and mean
Yeah,
when you
not
say
not because HR said it.
Right, and don't send a thank you note because HR said it. We should send thank you notes to everybody, and everybody in the company gets thank you notes. When you do it genuinely and you do it from the heart, people see through that right away.
Yeah, and it's really bad when it's disingenuous.
It's the worst.
You've been in the game for a while. What are some of the traps that you see HR leaders fall into?
One of those things is that we forget who we're there for, right? And I think this is a trap for a lot of HR people. We're there to help the company, sure. We're there to support leadership, but we're there for the people. Knowing that you're the voice of people and in an avenue and a group that you can go to that you can feel safe going to, there's a safe space there. I think when you blur the lines where you become so much intertwined with leadership that the people feel vulnerable. So I think that's one of the traps. The other trap is that we forget about the experience for people. We get stuck in the minutia and the process and the paper pushing, and we forget that there's a human again on the other side of that process. And so when we make processes, well, it worked out well because we're legally compliant. Yes, you always got to be legally compliant, but it doesn't mean your process has to suck. Making sure those two things, I think, are big time traps when we fall into it. Is we forget that we're there for people. Number one, that's our existence. That's what we're really good at. And number two is our processes can't be just because we want to be bureaucratic and follow the HR manual. Make sure those are friendly to people and their experience is really important.
Do you think the way that we develop our people in today's kind of world that we live in has changed?
It's one of our great challenges. And so what we found is that people still want to come together. They still want to come together and be with people. I think it's natural for humans to want to come together unless you're a deep introvert. But even deep introverts, like I would consider myself an introvert, still want to come together with people and break bread and stuff like that. And here we are. Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so I find that people still want to come together. So it's the balance between the YouTube world of how do I get into this digital program that I need to get into and get the 5-minute YouTube, here's how to, but from a leadership perspective and teaching young leaders how to do things, or new leaders or people new into leadership, how do you do that is still bringing them together and letting them talk about their challenges and how they do things, and putting them into scenarios and training them. So part of it's still old. No, it's still going to be old school. And then it's how you enhance the technology piece and some of the AI stuff down the road when it's getting in a better place on how to utilize that, so you can shorten the time to get people up to speed.
I think it's becoming even more important now that we make time for that, because with Zoom, with platforms like Zoom and LinkedIn Live and podcasts and everything, it's very rare that we have the opportunity to actually have that FaceTime. Because as you know, what we do as a business here at HR Leaders, which we never really talk about on the show, is every month I bring together a group of CHROs from all over the world who fly in for a full day of face-to-face networking and benchmarking and workshops with no media, no sales guys selling their products. Sorry, guys out there. As well. And we collaborate with incredible brands. Like our next sessions at Unilever, hosted by their team, and we'll have 30 CHROs joining us. You can't replace that. The kind of level of the relationships that are built in that room and the discussions that happen are you can't do that. Even on a Zoom call or a Skype call, you can't kind of build that connection.
And it's
relationships,
and it gets back to that trap. So never kind of underestimate that face-to-face contact and building that relationship. It's key.
Yeah. When I speak to people about, what was the biggest, when you're leading digital transformations, for example, which is kind of every HR leader I'm speaking to right now, so I'll say, what was the key to success? And one of the things they say is having that FaceTime with every leader. There's no way you can't replace that. Like some of them I know are on a plane traveling all over the world for a year to have that FaceTime with each of their leaders, to sit down, to understand their concerns face to face. There's no other way of doing it. And it's a common theme that keeps coming up over and over again. No matter what your challenge you're facing, that face-to-face time is so important. So
you can't lead by text.
No, exactly. I've made that mistake as well, right? When it comes to having these important conversations, as a young manager, I made so many mistakes of sending an email to someone when I should have had a face-to-face conversation. Right. What else is top of mind for you at the moment?
It's always top of mind, at least on the leadership development piece, is how do you do it better, smarter, and really better for the end participant, and how do you get them up to speed quickly in this digital age? And so everything is moving rapidly around us, and so how you help leaders adapt and grow into this age of going crazy, and teaching them to slow down. But how do you do that in real time? How do you bring the training to the front lines? We can sit in a classroom and do it all day, every day.
It doesn't matter if it's not being implemented.
Exactly. So it's how do you begin to really ratchet up the in real time in your job when things are coming up, and training while you're doing that. Unless you're an airline pilot, we don't want you doing that in real time. We want you to know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah. So, what effective ways have you employed then to make that happen?
A lot of it is, if we're doing kind of like the old school in session, it's the follow-up piece. It's bringing people back in bringing real-time situations that they have. But don't be so scripted in your training that people can't use real issues that they're dealing with and then work through those things in real time. And so I think that's one way we're doing it. We have to figure out other ways to do it at a high level, consistently. And it's really getting, it's not really the training department. It's our responsibility to help that, but it's really helping leaders lead others and how you do that. So it's really training those people to be able to coach in on the go. So we spend a lot of time on coaching on the go, and teaching our leaders on how to do that in real time becomes really important.
Yeah, they're the ones that are on the front line, having these conversations. It's not a HR issue. Right. It's not, you need to empower and train those leaders to be able to have those conversations, deliver that training as well. We had a question from Rebecca. She said, HR dad, how do you reconnect to disengaged employees?
I think it's one of those things where you have to reach out to them, and you have to find out who they are, why they're disconnected. What you find is sometimes it has nothing to do with work. And sometimes it's the most simplest, littlest thing that has irritated them that they haven't been able to verbalize, and it's an easy fix. Rarely is it this huge thing.
You think you make it up in your head, right? This big issue. You're 100% right.
Go and talk with the person. Hey, I understand things haven't you don't seem to be the way you typically are, or you seem a little off lately. Is everything okay? And it is what your question is. Are you okay?
It sounds simple, by the way, and by the way, there's no magical tool out there or software or platform, or it literally takes time of actually sitting down with the person, saying, "How are you?" Right, but genuinely meaning it as well. And otherwise, you kind of just, as you said, make up this kind of bigger issue that it probably isn't. The amount of times I've had employees that their performance have massively, gone from incredible to zero in terms of sales. Like, and I'm like, oh my god, something must be drastically wrong. But I sit down and have a conversation and find out, oh, they're having problems in their relationship right now, or someone in their family is ill at the moment. But no one's took the time just to say, how are you? Instead of walking in a meeting and saying, why haven't you hit your sales target?
Right. And and I think the other piece of it is, and it's a really critical piece, you have to be able to listen afterwards. And again, another simple thing, you're asking 3 questions followed by 3 words followed by a question mark. And then you got to be quiet. And then you actually have to listen. And then not only do you have to listen, you have to take it one step further. You have to hear what's being said, because, it's just like you go back to the kids, you'll see when Robin's older, you ask them a question, you're, what was that? What'd you say? Everything okay at school today? Yeah. Well, what's going on? Well, I had a problem at lunch and somebody said, whatever. And then you get to the root of the matter, and you work through it. You help that person work through it so they can get on with their day. Yeah. So I think it's a great question. And I think you have to really take the time to ask simple questions and listen.
What is it about working at the University of Miami which has kept you there for so as long as you have, and keeps you engaged?
Well, what I love about the University of Miami, and we have a health system as well, is when you get in a university setting, it's a mission-based deal. It's nonprofit typically, and people are on a mission. Like for us, our mission is to transform lives. And if you can't get behind that, it's hard. If I want to transform lives, you can't wake up in the morning and go, I want to transform lives today. Transform lives today. No, you got to wake up and say, look, there's a student, there's a patient, there's a colleague, there's a coworker that I could impact right now through education, through service, and all kinds of different things that we get to do. So I think that's number one, is there's an actual mission-based, whether it's on the healthcare side to at times saving lives, you transform lives there, and on the academic side is you really learn how to change somebody in their formative years of how to really mature and grow, and some of these people, and you're around some of the stuff that happens on these campuses, regardless of where you work. It's just you see the incredible things that are advances in healthcare. You see some of these bright young 18 to 21, 22-year-olds. I mean, you talk to them. I mean, they're brighter, they're smarter than ever I ever was, and they are just bright, and they're smart, and they do things at a whole different level than generations before. So the future is definitely bright. So I guess that drives us to get out of bed every day and go do our work. And on top of it, the people by far are just people I get to work with on a daily basis are just exceptional.
Before we wrap up, I want to jump into our quick fire round.
Okay.
So what was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming a HR executive?
It's me. It just it's gremlins. It's not thinking you're good enough, smart enough, talented enough, and so I think that becomes, once you put those fears away, you can move forward within your career. I did the same thing when I launched my podcast, last week. It took me 4 to 6 months to do it because of me.
That's what I said to you when we spoke, right? I was like, stop thinking and just put it out.
Yes. Yeah. And I did.
You did. Congratulations. Yeah. And before we go with the next question, what is the podcast? Give a shout out. Come on.
So it's called Everyday People Podcast by the HR Dad. And it's everyday people like you and I that, I just feel that they have a big story to tell. So it's real people and they're real big stories. And so it could be anybody from a CEO to somebody that may be a janitor, and they just have a big story. So talk to all kinds of incredible people.
Yeah. Check it out, everyone. Check it out. Next question. What is the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
I think for me, it's know when enough is enough. And I had a business years ago, and I was trying to make it work, and it was done already, right? It just was done. And so in my angst of trying to do my best to make it work. You got to know when to say enough is enough. So I think that was, to me, even though it's not necessarily on the positive side, it goes hand in hand of what to say no to as well.
What's one book you'd recommend to our audience and why?
I don't know. I've read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Regardless of your situation, how you have this positive and strong mindset is really, really important. If you can survive 5 different concentration camps and still have this wonderful, positive way of thinking about things, you can do that when you get snubbed by something or whatever thing you stub your toe on. So you learn incredible kind of things from that. And then
that is pretty incredible, right? And that's a book that's recommended quite often. I've not managed to read all of it. I kind of read parts and gone back and forth.
Right?
As well. But that's one of the reasons why I try my best to kind of start the day by with gratitude and actually saying out loud the things that I'm grateful for. Because it's so easy to look at what we don't have,
right,
or the challenges that we're facing. It's so easy to do that. It's like our default almost as humans. So I kind of make it a daily habit to say, what am I grateful for?
Right.
To kick off the day.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. And we actually start our staff meetings with gratitude. And so it changes the entire dynamic. It doesn't make a difference how bad the day is. You go around that table, 14, 15 people, forget it. I mean, it's just, you're in a better place.
Yeah. So there you go. For everyone listening, that you have in your meeting tomorrow or on Monday, whenever you have it, don't start with how far are we away from achieving our goal? What are sales? What's in the sales pipeline or out there? Start with, good news, gratitude.
And, one person will start it, and then it will go like fire.
Yeah, it's so important, right? Because we always kick things off with the most pressing, challenging issues, but it's like it's a terrible way to start your Monday morning, for example. And if anything, I saw some research about how people don't even enjoy their Sunday, right? Because they're always worried about that Monday meeting where we're going to talk about sales targets. So for me, I remember going my Monday morning meeting with the global sales director, and I had to give a pipeline of all of my different sales teams of what money is going to be coming in. And it's like immediately on a Sunday night, my journey to work, that whole entire morning, it's a terrible way to start your week,
right?
Or your day as well. So I think
I'm also reading a book, Your Team Loves Mondays, right? With a question mark, by Christian Sherry. She interviewed me for some spots in the book. So it's for new leaders. And so it's always good to refresh and make sure, if you've been in leadership for a while and you're helping other new leaders, you remember where they're at.
What resources do you use? So in terms of like keeping up to date with current events, trends in HR, in the workplace in general, what are some of the online resources you use that your go-to?
I mean, I do all the normal stuff from SHRM to all the training TV stuff and things of that nature. But I also look for inspiration from other places. So I will look at things that are just, it might be business related. It might be, I'll look at things around psychology. I'll look at things on the human. I'll look at studies around that. I'll look at how the humans make decisions and things of that nature. And then I'll look in some other new things that are out there. The AI stuff is always cool to kind of look at, but that's kind of like the new shiny toy.
The new buzzwords.
Right. The new buzzwords. I tend to stay away from those until they get worked out a little bit. But really I try to immerse in areas that are maybe non-traditional to look at the human condition.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. It's been a pleasure. Before we wrap up, if there's sort of one parting piece of advice you give to everyone, what would that be? And then where can everyone check you out if they want to learn more and connect? Be
yourself and don't apologize for it. If you want to do something, I kind of liken it to being the salmon, and it's kind of you challenging the status quo. Go upriver a little bit, go pursue.
Go against the grain
and challenge, but do it in a way that's proactive and positive for the betterment of your organization and betterment for yourself and your HR career.
Mm-hmm. And where can people check you out?
Sure. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Certainly feel free to connect with me. I love you to connect there. And also you can check me out on my own personal branding website, which is thehrdad.com.
Literally. See, you're not that old school. You got a website. You got social
I
media.
know. That's because my kids
Part of the cool
they're
dad.
trying to talk me into TikTok. I'm not there yet. I'm just not there
Can you
yet.
imagine? Shall I get the HR Leaders podcast on TikTok? What do you reckon, guys? Listening, is that a place? Is that what we're doing? I'm on Alexa. I feel like that's pretty cool.
There you go.
Like I see that we've got like a couple of thousand people that listen to the podcast.
That's amazing.
Every month on Amazon Alexa, which always surprises me. I'm like, who is it? Who's out there in the morning listening? Oh yeah, by the way, Laura said Viktor Frankl, how marvelous, a genius reference. A lot to learn from his insights, right? It's pretty profound.
Very profound.
As well. So not the easiest of reads though. Well, thank you so much again. If you're not already subscribed to the podcast, guys, follow me here on LinkedIn so you'll be notified next time we go live. Apart from that, we'll let you all go home. And we wish you all the best until we next week. See you later.